weeks.
And we're back.
And we're back. And we're home.
Yay.
Vacation's always good, though. Like, it's always hard a little bit to leave, because it's like, we have to go back to life. We have to go back to the normal and the school and getting the kids going in school and get ready for all the things that are coming up. Like, we've been looking forward to vacation, and then it's over, and it's like, okay, now we have to, like, move forward going through all of the things that come next. So,
and that's kind of, as a parent, that's, you begin to see, I guess, what our parents realize, that you have like summer and the season of summer, and then you have the different seasons really do mean more as parents than they ever did to me as a kid. Like, as a kid, it was more broken down into like sports seasons. Okay, this is the season where we play baseball, this season where we play soccer, this is the season. But now, as an adult, it's...
Or watch sports. So this is the season where we watch football. This is the season where... Anyway.
Yeah. But you see what I mean? Like, it's as an adult, it's much more, okay, that was some break, and now we're back to school. And, okay, now we're on, like, the seasons make more sense now.
Yeah.
In a good way. But this week, we had a lot. So we went to church on Sunday and had Pastor Craig's, I'm not going to say gut-wrenching sermon, but it was a good solid sermon. And I think he said at the beginning he was going to step on toes and stuff.
And I feel like, yeah,
and it's like, oh, okay, Pastor, yeah. But so we went to church on Sunday, and then we watched Fairies
Sunday night.
So it was very much in line with it.
Yeah.
And now this is one of the Bluey episodes that is like, I really like it. Yeah. I really like the message. I don't believe in fairies. We don't teach our kids about fairies. So literally our daughter's like, why did the fairy do it? It's like, well, they're pretend. Yeah. They're pretend. They're not real. It's just pretend. It's a TV show. It's pretend. They're talking dogs. It's pretend. Like, that actually helps a little bit, that it is...
To separate that.
It's a cartoon about talking dogs. The whole thing is pretend. Fairies are pretend. But I really liked how Bandit does interact. I know that they play along with the whole fairy thing, and that's something that gets me as a person who's like, fairies aren't real. But we were talking about God the other day, and Lenny was like, but we can't see God. And it's like, okay, but God's real. And so we're having to start to talk about...
She's at that age where she's understanding the things that are pretend, and then we're trying to draw that distinction between, okay, a fairy is pretend and isn't real, and God is real, but you can't see him, and
he's not pretend.
He's not pretend. And so she's in that, trying to understand, and we're trying to help her connect these dots and walking through that. And it's the first time, like, she's our oldest, so it's the first time that we are walking through this process with her. And it's really, Lee Strobel's A Case for Christ, and like I've read all of these apologetics books, and we've gone through all this stuff, but explaining this to a 6-year-old and explaining this in words that she would understand and that she can connect, it's a whole different thing. But we've kind of stepped back a little bit from watching a whole lot of fairies and unicorns and like all of these things that it's like, yeah, those don't exist a little bit. We kind of stepped away, and then we watch fairies, and it's like, and they're not real, they're pretend. Yeah. These are pretend. So, except some people do believe they're real, and then trying to explain that, because some people actually do believe that they do exist. And so it's like,
well, I didn't even really go. Yeah. We dipped our toe into that dilemma.
But to me, it's not. The episode really isn't about the fairies as much as it's about stepping on our kids' toes and doing things that. And this, okay, so this episode is actually kind of difficult for me, because the first time I watched it, 1, it was fairies, which we don't really do fairies, and then 2, the whole thing, I'm like, Bingo's throwing a fit. Bingo is throwing a fit. This whole thing is Bingo throwing a fit. And Bob Goff says, you either lead from your healing or your hurt. And so had to work on some healing through this just a little bit, because I'm like, Bingo needs a spanking. Because that's what I would have gotten when I was a kid. And had I done what Bingo did, that's what would have happened. And it's like, okay, I need to take a step back. A, that's not how we parent. And B, I am leading from my hurt in this situation and not my healing. And so, okay, what is the deeper message here, and what is actually happening? And so I like, this one was actually a little bit difficult for me the first couple of times that we watched it, because it was, so she's throwing a fit, and Bingo is just like, this is a fit that she's throwing, and they are letting her throw a fit, and that is not the way. So
one thing that actually made it easier for me is that they never actually show Bingo doing any of the things.
Yeah, that's true.
And in fact, when she looks over at Bluey for some reason, and then she looks back at you watch her look at Bingo, and then you watch Bingo look at Bluey, and then you watch Bingo look at Mom, and Mom has a peg beard. And
I wondered how much the mom did.
I honestly think that what the implication is that everyone is playing along, and that Mom put a peg beard on herself, and that Bluey put stuff on her own tail, and that they were doing stuff to themselves or to each other. I think mostly to themselves, honestly, if I go back and think about it. And even Bandit holding the roller skates on his hands. Oh, they're so tight, they're triple knotted. Well, as soon as Bingo is unstuck, Bandit throws him off.
Yeah.
He was holding on to them the whole time. Like, you understand that they were all, I feel like they were all playing along. So I didn't feel like it was Bingo doing one thing.
Okay, but she destroyed the house.
She did. They're in the
when
pantry.
They're in the cupboard, when they're in the pantry,
and then they come
Bingo
out.
goes out and does all this stuff, she destroyed that house. Like...
or fairies really are real, because at the end they do show a little fairy, and the fairies helped, because there was stuff in the house. I don't know how Bingo could have done it.
That's true.
By herself. She was gone a long time though, so they give that ambiguity. Anyway, long story short, it's an interesting episode, and I feel like at the heart of it though, it all boils down to Bingo was really excited about something, and she ran in to tell her dad, and her dad was working, had a work call, and said, Bingo, just give me a second. And Bingo didn't just give him a second. And Bandit gets frustrated and said, wait, stop. And that hurt Bingo's feelings.
Yeah.
And Bandit didn't mean to hurt her feelings. But you know what it made me think of? A similar story that we heard from the guy with the parenting class that we watched, Going Kids God's Way, about the pine cone that his daughter had put on the kitchen table. And it was like a fresh pine cone, and it still had sap and stuff on it. And she's like, Dad, look what I found. And he saw that pine cone leaking sap on their table. And he said, get that off the table right now. And she was crushed.
Yeah.
And it was that, I wanted to show you this cool thing I found, Dad.
Yeah.
And it's that reaction that we have that we think is a valid reaction. In fact, I was reading an article about parents, you sent it to me, about parents asking their kids for forgiveness, and how do we do that? And it was a parent who was making lunch and told her kid that she could paint a pastel thing. Well, and she told her kid, cover the couch before you do this. Yeah. Well, the kid did everything but cover the couch. And so the couch was then covered with this red pastel paint. And the mom saw it and snapped and
exploded.
I told you not to do that. And the kid was just crushed, right? And it's that reaction.
And that's something that we're, especially with Lenny, that we're working on, is you aren't responsible for other people's actions, but you're responsible for your reaction to what other people do. You know, it's not okay for this person to take away your toy. However, you screaming at them is the wrong reaction. And it's really easy to justify ourselves. And I feel like as parents, it's
absolutely.
really easy to justify she just got red pastels all over my couch. And, should I have blown up? No. But she just ruined my couch. Like, it's really easy to justify ourselves, especially with our kids, I feel like. And well, she knows she did something wrong. And that was something that it was a parents.com article. It was actually real on forgiveness. It was really good. And at the end, they were talking about how important it is to actually say the words, I'm sorry. And like, it's not enough to just, make it up to him. I yell at him, I'll give him some extra dessert tonight. They understand that but to actually stop and say, I am sorry. And, throughout this whole process, I was like, why are Bandit and Chili going through this whole process this whole time and playing through this whole thing? And then, but when they get to the apology part at the end, he doesn't say what he apologizes for.
Does he not?
Nope. He says, I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. I love you and I would do anything for you. He does not say what he apologized, like what he did wrong. And so many times I feel like we either justify or, we make up, and it's like, I don't need to apologize. They know what they did, and then we'll just make it up to them and don't actually say the words. But how important it is to actually say, I'm sorry. And we were going through different scriptures and different Bible verses that potentially we could, and the first one, is always the do not, drawing a blank, the parents don't anger your kids.
Yeah.
Don't upset your kids. And it's like, well, but you can't, that's not always, but you're not perfect. And going back to Pastor Craig's sermon this week, like, we are human. And we're the parent. No, we are still human. And we are not perfect. And as much as I would love to say, even as a Christian, that I don't mess up as a parent, there are times we are human. And that God, that needing God isn't just, in our for our salvation, but it's for being a parent, because we are going to make mistakes and we are not enough. As a parent, I am not enough, and I don't want my kids to think that I can do this by myself. Like,
well, there's several, and one, I feel like part of what we do as parents is model to our kids. Yes, we're going to make mistakes, and yes, we're going to lose our temper. And how do we then respond? And part of it might be, in fact, I feel like sometimes we should be, because we have the kids do this. And it's so easy to do it to your kids. So, for example, when one of our kids messes up, we have them pray and ask God to forgive them for what they did wrong, and ask the person that they've hurt to forgive them. But I feel like as a parent, I don't feel like I've done that where it's, I know I hurt my kid's feeling.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to take my kid and I'm going to apologize to them, and then I'm going to, with them right there with me, I'm going to pray and say, God,
ouch,
forgive me, right?
Ouch.
for hurting my kid's feeling. Because we've been teaching our kids to do that, to ask God for forgiveness when we do something wrong. But modeling that is going to look a little differently.
And that's one thing that the article, she hit on, and she was quoting somebody, and I don't have that in front of me who she was quoting, and I will have to post this article for you guys to read. But she was saying so many times we think of asking forgiveness as weakness. And it is not. It is not weakness to ask for forgiveness. And it is showing our kids that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay for them to make mistakes. and this is how we work through our mistakes. And it's actually a strength to be able to, and as parents, it's like, no, I'm not going to show weakness to my kids. Well, reset that in your brain. It's not. It's actually showing them a strength to be able to say, I am sorry. And would you please forgive me? And asking God the same. That would be.
And it all comes down to, we're modeling it for our kids, and if we're doing that, then we have to. One thing I really don't like is double standards. I really strongly dislike it when the parent has a different set of rules that apply to them than the kid. It's like, no, you are not in fact practicing what you preach. And so
I read a thing this week about screen time. Oh my goodness. Okay. It was rough. It was a rough read, because it was talking about the double standard, and it's talking about how we as parents are on this huge kick about, like, kids shouldn't have too much screen time, and they're doing too much screen time, and we should get kids off the phone, and they need to be outside all this time. And yet we take our kids outside. I'm pointing at me, and I'm on my phone while my kids are playing at the park. And she was talking about, I'll have to. It was
double
hard.
Standards are bad, because it teaches that if it's okay for you, but it's not okay for me, then it's going to be okay for me when I become you.
Yeah.
And that's not how we want our kids to behave. And so, circling back to forgiveness, I got off track.
I got deeper off track.
Okay, but it's that we need to, if we're going to tell our kids, when you do something wrong, you have to apologize, and we have to do the same thing with them.
Yeah.
And it's not a sign of weakness, it's actually modeling good behavior.
Yeah.
And then Jesus, in Matthew 5, he's talking the Beatitudes, and he's like, hey, you're going to the temple, and you have your offering to sacrifice to God. And then you realize that somebody has something against you. Not, notice that he says that you've hurt somebody or intentionally, somebody has something against you. That's pretty vague.
Yeah.
And I love that it is, because it could be, well, I didn't mean to. Like, you can justify so many things for why you shouldn't need to apologize. Well, I didn't mean to. They took what I said the wrong way. Regardless of what it is, somebody has something against you. Stop what you're doing. Leave your sacrifice there. Go and be reconciled first.
Yeah.
That's more important than offering a sacrifice to God. It's more important than giving God your tithe or whatever it is. Like, stop and say, wait, somebody is offended by me, or I've hurt somebody's feelings, inadvertently or advertently. If you realize it, stop. And he's like, that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, because so many times we justify they're the ones in the wrong. Like, I was sticking up for the truth or whatever it was. And so, but it's like, no, like, this isn't right. And that's hard, especially when you're right. That's hard. But it's more important to be reconciled than it is to be right.
And Bandit literally dances around the mailbox in front of all of his neighbors. His neighbors. Like, if you think of all the things that those neighbors have gone through.
What gets me a little bit about that is he's okay doing a million things to his neighbors, to Lucky's dad, and to the lady next door to them. But when he goes to the park and he's embarrassed because some random other dad walks up, it's like, why are you embarrassed now? You've literally done much more humiliating things in front of your neighbors. Anyway, another verse, Colossians 3:13, make allowance for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. Anyone who offends you. Remember, the Lord himself forgave you, so you must forgive others. It's so easy to get offended.
It's so easy to get offended. And I feel like that teaching our kids not to be offended is something that is like, and not be easily offended. It's so easy, especially with texting and with, you have no idea what an exclamation point means. You have no idea if they send an emoji. Like, there's so many times that it's so easy to get offended and to set yourself up to be offended. because you know that this person is going to do something that you don't like. You can literally set them up for failure because you know how they're going to like it. And so teaching our kids not to be offended and to forgive people who offend them and to go to those people instead of, you know, letting it fester, instead of letting the lid on the crock pot or the pressure cooker just sit there and build tension until you explode. Like, go to the person, as the Bible said, go to that person and reconcile with that person. Whether it's, and teaching them now, so when they get married, and we've talked about, you know, when we were first married, the silent treatment, like, I just thought he should know what was wrong. And I would literally set him up to fail because he should see that the trash can is full. The trash can is full. He should be taking this out. And I would get mad at him for not taking out the trash when I think he should just notice it. Instead of me just saying, would you take out the trash? Like, I was mad.
Is that why you're upset?
I was mad, and I would literally set him up to fail because I thought he should know. I thought he should notice. And we've gone through, and like I said, we've talked about our marriage counseling and the different things that we've gone through as a couple. And one of the things that one of our marriage counselors along the way, it was a communications class in marriage communication, and one of the things that they said was, don't set your partner up to fail. And I don't know why I had not like connected those dots in my head before, but it was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like, instead of just expecting him to know, because he's got other things on his mind, he's not thinking about the same thing that I'm thinking about. He doesn't notice the same thing that I'm thinking about. And so instead of just expecting it and then getting mad when he doesn't, just saying this.
Mm-hmm. And I feel it's the same way with kids as well. So we think they should know. I think, for example, every time I walk into the floor and see a toy on the floor, my kids should know to pick this up.
Yeah.
They don't. They were thinking, I'm playing with that. I walked away. I'm going to come back and play with that in about 30 minutes or an hour or 2 hours or 4 hours, and I want to play with that again. Yeah. And I'm thinking, if you're not playing with it right now, it shouldn't be on the floor. But if I get upset with them for not knowing what I'm thinking, I'm setting them up to fail.
Yeah.
And it's that make allowance for each other's faults and then expressing what we want. So in this case, hey, if you're not playing with this, please pick it up and put it out of the way so no one steps on it.
Yeah. And setting that expectation. This is the expectation. And this is what we expect of you in this.
And being consistent. And then doing the same thing on my side. So for example, if I get something out and I'm playing with it, I say playing loosely, and I'm working on something, and it's in the middle of the floor. If I'm done with it, even if I'm not complete with it, I need to move it out of the way so that I'm modeling the same thing.
Yeah.
Because if I don't, then it's a double standard.
Yeah.
Now, in the thing, they gave some nice, helpful hints about how to apologize for your kids. Because the wrong way to do it is this. I'm sorry that you felt hurt. You were wrong to feel hurt because I didn't mean to hurt you. That's not the right way to apologize. It's that, oh, yeah, I'm sorry that you took what I said wrongly. Backhanded, no. So what you do is you recognize that their feelings were hurt. Whether or not you meant to hurt their feelings. I'm sorry. I know, and Bandit does this. He says, I'm sorry, I hurt your feelings. It must feel really bad when your dad does that. So you're valid. It's like, yes, you felt this way. He doesn't say, I had to finish the work thing or whatever, but then it's accept responsibility for what you did. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I hurt your feelings. Explain. Now this person said, explain why it happened. So for example, in their example in the article, their teenage kid came up and wanted to spend time with them, and they, instead of listening, just kind of, no, stop talking, I can't talk to you right now, and had to do something. And it hurt their kid's feelings because the kid wanted to come up and hang out with him. And so it was, I'm sorry that I didn't let you talk. I was so busy trying to get this work thing done. And I'm sorry that, I kind of just lashed out at you. And then they said, show how what you are going to do to where it's not going to happen that way again.
Yeah.
And then the example of the red pastel paints, it was, instead of, oh, I'm going to expect you never to paint on the couch, it was, I shouldn't have assumed that you would know all the steps. And so I'm going to take a deep breath instead of yelling at you if I see that you did something wrong. With the yelling at it was what startled her. It was, why on earth did you do that? It was that. And it's, instead of doing that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a deep breath and calm myself down when I realize that something happened. And I'm not going to yell at you like that.
And something that we've done with our kids, and it's just something that I've found to be helpful, is what do you do when you make a mess? You clean it up. And so when they make a mess, what do we do when we make a mess? And then they say, clean it up. And that helps me stop and say, okay, what do we do? Clean it up. And it like helps me to, just 1 second, I've got a kid knocking.
What I try to do is take a deep breath. And that's something we taught our kids, is when you're upset and someone's done something, you take a deep breath and try to calm down. And it doesn't always work with the kids. It doesn't always work with me. But that's something I try to do, is just take a second. Instead of just reacting right away, take a second. And we've mentioned this before, I think actually Megan mentioned it. It's I ask myself, will this matter in the end? Will this matter in a day, in 2 days, in a year? Are we going to look back at this and be like, oh my goodness, this was such a pitiful thing? Probably not. So, taking a deep breath. But we do say this, if there's a mess, what are we doing to make a mess? We clean it up.
So sorry. His finger hurt.
Oh.
So he had to come tell me that. So it's that instead of making excuses, instead of getting angry, it's setting myself up for stop, breathe. What do we do when we make a mess? And instead of reacting and shouting or getting upset or like, why? This just broke and it wasn't supposed to break and we're now. And it's like, what do we do when we make a mess? Clean it up. And that resets in my brain enough where I can stop and get control of my emotions and then process what we need to do next.
Yeah. And I feel like that's helpful because it gives you a clear next step.
Yeah.
Other than yelling and getting upset. It's, what do we do to make a mess? Okay, we do this thing.
Yeah.
And it's teaching our kids, what do you do if? And hopefully it becomes ingrained where, what do you do if someone's feelings are hurt? You stop and apologize.
Well, and I feel like that, and like your example with the teenager she was doing work and then, okay, I'm going to stop and do this. There is going to be some age appropriate, when you're asking a 2-year-old for forgiveness, they don't care about what you're going to do next. It's okay, mommy's sorry for shouting at you. I will try to, like, and you can't say, I'll never shout at you again. Like, you've got to process through exactly kind of how to say that. But there's a difference between apologizing to a teenager, mm-hmm. Okay, and I feel like that when something like that happens, it's not always just going to be an apology and I'm going to set my work down and you will take precedence over it.
Right.
No. There may have to be some, in the future, if I'm working on an email, let's figure out a way so that we can communicate and I don't hurt your feelings, but I can still finish my work. Like, how do we need to work through? And I feel like that there's going to be it opens the door when communicating with and apologizing, it opens the door for more communication and saying, okay, what do we need to do next time so that we don't make a mess? Do I need to help you set up the couch and the chair so that everything's covered before we do the pastels? Or do we need to set up a way that, okay, you're ready to talk to me and I'm still doing work, can you put the little rubber duck next to my computer that lets me know you're ready to talk? Like, is there figuring out ways that you open the door for communication? And like I said, it changes as the kids get older, but it's not just apologizing and I'll never do that again. Because when you say I'll never do, never is never.
Yeah. So,
never's a long time.
And one thing, you showed me actually a little clip of a kid pouring orange juice and trying to set up this little thing, and it's adorable.
It's so cute.
Except he's a toddler, and he's trying to pour orange juice, and he gets the orange juice out of the fridge, and he gets the cups out, and he pours the orange juice in the cups, and he's taking the cups, and he takes a sip out of one cup, and he drops the other cup on the floor, and he's like, uh-oh, gotta clean it up. And I'm like, good. And so he gets a wash rag or something, he tries to clean it up, and gets another cup, and he comes out, and then he slips and falls in the orange juice that he'd already spilled.
You're so sad.
And he wipes out.
So sad.
And it's one of those, and the parents, I'm guessing, is just sitting there behind him filming the whole thing. And it's like, okay, at what point are we setting our kids up to fail?
Yeah.
And at what point are we actually helping them? And I feel like the helping is, yes, you can do this on your own, but also realizing the boundaries, the limitations that the kid has with communication. Anyway, long story short, you know where your kids are, work with them, set healthy boundaries.
But apologize. And
when you do something wrong, which
yeah.
you're going to do something wrong because you're human.
And use that as an opportunity to, I love you more than anything, and I would do anything for you. And I love that that's how I would do anything for you. And then he goes and dances around the mailbox. Like, just, that's all. Like, I love how the episode ends.
Yeah.
But it's that setting up that communication with your kids and apologizing, and then opening that door for being able to communicate with them in the future. And I feel like that is, we're gonna mess up. We're gonna mess up. And because we're human. And inviting God in and having him direct us and help us is so vital. But when we mess up, because we're gonna mess up, it's having that precedence of not making excuses, but asking for forgiveness.
And we're past time, so we'll go ahead and pray and cut it out. Father, we thank you for this time, for this group. We thank you for the work you're doing in our lives with our kids. Help us to be good models for our kids. Help us to show them how you've forgiven us, and help us to forgive others and to model that for them. In Jesus' name, amen.
You guys have a great week.
Yep.
See you next time.
Bye.